Good morning and welcome to A News. I'm Bakhtiar Asanov and here are the top stories. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Congress to increase funding to strengthen border security and implement tax reforms. Denmark commits $2 billion to strengthen Arctic security. Artificial intelligence stocks have taken a major hit after the Chinese startup DeepSeek gained traction in the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump has called on Congress to increase funding to strengthen border security and implement tax reforms. Trump shared his views on upcoming legislative efforts and priorities with Republicans. He also made significant remarks about completing the border wall and extending tax cuts.
U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded increased funding from Congress to strengthen border security. He voiced this request during an event held by the Republican Party at the Doral Resort in Miami.
In the coming weeks, I'm looking forward to working with Congress on a reconciliation bill that financially takes care of our plans to totally and permanently restore the sovereign borders of the United States once and for all. This should include full funding for a record increase in border security personnel and retention bonuses for ICE and Border Patrol. These people are incredible people. I got to know them so well.
According to Trump, he considers it essential that the additional funds be allocated to increasing detention facilities, improving border infrastructure, and completing the construction of the wall along the border with Mexico.
We also need a massive increase in the number of detention beds and funding for all border security infrastructure and barriers, including the completion of the border wall.
The U.S. president also discussed his approach regarding the issue of taxation, underscoring his intention to introduce significant tax cuts and reforms.
I'm also eager to get to work with Congress on the largest package of tax cuts and reforms in American history. We got to get that done. And we want to keep people's taxes low and actually make them lower. And that's not just rich people, that's everybody. It's frankly, proportionately the lower scale, much more so than a higher scale. Not only must we permanently extend the Trump tax cuts, if we don't, you're going to have about a 60% tax increase.
Donald Trump's speech coincided with the end of his first week in office, which has already brought significant political changes to U.S. policies in a number of sectors.
At the same time, the number of migrants applying for refugee status in Mexico is rapidly increasing. Hundreds of migrants from Haiti and Venezuela have been turning to temporary refugee offices in Mexico following the U.S. cancellation of the CBP-1 system. Due to the surge in applications, COMAR offices are struggling to effectively manage the situation.
Approximately 1,500 migrants, primarily from Haiti and Venezuela, formed long lines outside the temporary offices of the Commission for Refugee Assistance and Migration near Mexico City.
We were waiting for the CBP-1 appointments, but now we're all left with our hands tied as Trump says, stay in Mexico. I'm here because my husband was killed in Ecuador. I have evidence, complaints, videos of how they killed my husband. They also killed the father of my grandchildren, who are also here. I'm here with my children and grandchildren, and our dream is to reach the United States.
This wave of migration was triggered by the U.S. government's cancellation of the CBP-1 appointment system, introduced during Donald Trump's presidency, which had allowed thousands of migrants to enter the U.S. legally.
My opportunity, my vision, was to reach the United States, but now the dream is over. I have no other choice but to stay here because of the deportation policies of the United States. And because my country, Haiti, isn't safe, it has political problems. I don't want to return there now.
Faced with rising demand, immigration officers are struggling to handle the surge of asylum applications. Meanwhile, the US government has intensified deportation measures, even employing military aircraft to expedite the process.
Why am I telling them this? To prevent people from wasting time here, because the immigration office only serves 300 people. Last Thursday, they only received 115. There are people left over from Thursday to Friday, and from Friday to Monday, which is why today there's a large crowd waiting for their turn to be served.
Last week, the Commission for Refugee Assistance and Migration Office faced significant challenges in processing applications, managing to serve only a small number of migrants daily.
Denmark will allocate approximately $2 billion to enhance security in the Arctic region, a vital area in geopolitical and military terms. That's according to the country's defense ministry. Denmark's move follows U.S. President Donald Trump's recent comments suggesting an interest in acquiring Greenland, the autonomous Danish territory, citing its importance to U.S. international security. The strategic location of Greenland, along with its untapped mineral resources, has made it a focal point in the growing global competition over the Arctic region, especially as climate change has opened new shipping routes in the area. Denmark's Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen emphasized the escalating security challenges in the Arctic and North Atlantic. The announcement comes as Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen prepares for a series of meetings in Berlin, Paris and Brussels this week aimed at reinforcing European unity on matters related to Greenland. She emphasized the importance of collaboration in the light of ongoing war in Europe and shifting global dynamics. NATO Support and Procurement Agency published a request for proposals for spare parts for the Eurofighter Typhoon, with Turkey as the designated end user. The NATO Support and Procurement Agency's tender, covering 4 categories of spare parts, highlights Turkey's progress in securing 40 Eurofighter Typhoon jets to modernize its air force. The document is for 4 different spare parts which contain 250 items in 4 separate categories for the Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jet. NSPA is NATO's lead organization for multinational acquisition, support and sustainment in all domains. Discussions between Turkey and consortium members, including the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy and Spain, are reportedly progressing positively. Although Turkey has reached an agreement with all the consortium countries, the negotiation process with Germany is progressing much slower than the others. Turkish defense industry followers and writers are approaching the procurement process with caution because similar process did take place for the F-35 fighter jets as well. As a result, they are hesitant to make definitive statements until the entire acquisition process has been completed. Recently, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz commented on Turkey's interest in purchasing Eurofighter Typhoon jets. Scholz said technical talks are currently underway ahead of a potential sale. Turkey is looking to acquire 40 Eurofighter jets, which would significantly enhance its air defense capabilities. Recently, a Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jet from the United Kingdom Royal Air Force landed at Murted Air Base in Ankara, marking a significant development in Turkey's ongoing defense discussions with Berlin. Iran purchased Russian-made Sukhoi 35 fighter jets, a senior IRGC official confirmed. This is the first time an Iranian official has confirmed the purchase of Su-35 jets. It's however unclear how many planes were purchased and whether they had already been delivered to Iran. The purchase comes amid Western concerns about Tehran and Moscow's growing military cooperation. Earlier this month, Iran and Russia signed a comprehensive strategic partnership which did not mention arms transfers. but said the two will develop their military technical cooperation. Iran's Air Force has only a few dozen strike aircraft, including Russian jets, as well as aging US models acquired before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Thousands of students in Belgrade have blocked a main traffic route for 24 hours, demanding justice for the Novi Sad train station tragedy.
Protests continue in Belgrade as thousands of students and citizens blocked a major road overnight, demanding justice for the deadly collapse at the Novi Sad train station last November. The students accuse authorities of failing to take responsibility for the collapse, which they believe was caused by corruption, mismanagement, and shoddy construction. The renovation of the Novi Sad train station, which was overseen by state authorities and partly funded through deals with Chinese companies, has been under intense scrutiny.
We have to move in a certain direction and some change has to happen. And of course, we are prepared and sure that more challenging times lie ahead. This process is like cleaning a house. When you start cleaning, you have to create a total mess so that you can tidy everything up. It's the same with our country. We hope for that and we are ready for anything.
While President Alexander Vučić and other government officials held a press conference on the same day, where they assured that the investigation was ongoing and promised accountability, the students remained skeptical. Vučić stated that most of the demands from the protesters had been met, including the release of important documents, charges against those involved, and the promise of a pardon for arrested students. Students argue that the government's response is insufficient and demand those responsible in the tragedy to face severe consequences. The deadly collapse at the Novi Sad train station happened on November 1st, 2024, when a large concrete canopy at the train station fell, killing 15 people and injuring others.
The World Food Programme in Afghanistan says it can only feed half of the millions in need due to international aid cuts and US funding freezes. Concerns over Taliban restrictions on women and global emergencies have contributed to reduced donations.
Millions of Afghans are at risk of starvation, according to the World Food Programme, which says its funds are limited. This comes as the United States freezes almost all foreign assistance following an executive order signed by US President Donald Trump. With around one-third of the population of Afghanistan in acute hunger, according to the WFP, cuts to foreign aid have limited the food agency to feeding only half the millions of Afghans in need.
Any potential reduction in assistance for Afghanistan is, of course, concerning. And that assistance, whether it is assistance to WFP or another actor, the levels of need are just so high here in Afghanistan. And I certainly hope that any decisions made, any implementation of decisions made, take into consideration, just as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's the people and the needs of the people.
Afghanistan's economy has been on the brink since the Taliban took power in 2021, seeing 23 million people living in acute hunger. While that number has decreased to 15 million, the current figures still represent a critical humanitarian crisis.
We've seen levels of food insecurity. In August 2021, there was this massive deterioration in food security, just rapid levels of hunger that rose. And that winter, we saw the IPC, people in acute hunger at 23 million people. And now we're just a little bit shy of 15. So in that respect, it seems like things are a lot better. But 15 million people is still 1/3 of the country. And it's 1/3 of the population who are really struggling.
Afghanistan's humanitarian plan was only just over half funded in 2024. That's according to UN data. Aid officials have flagged fears this could fall further this year.
Auschwitz survivors warned of the dangers of rising anti-Semitism as they marked the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi German death camp. The ceremony at the site of the camp, which Nazi Germany set up in occupied Poland during World War II to murder European Jews on a huge scale, was attended by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Britain's King Charles, and many other leaders. They did not make speeches, but rather listened to those who suffered and witnessed at first hand one of humanity's greatest atrocities.
Against a global rise in anti-Semitism and against
Around 1.1 million people were killed in Auschwitz, the largest Nazi death camp. Most of the victims were Jews killed on an industrial scale in gas chambers, but also Poles and the Rome Soviet prisoners of war and people of other nationalities.
Auschwitz, the biggest and most notorious of the Nazi concentration and death camps, stands as a chilling reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust. Established in 1940 in southern Poland, Auschwitz-Birkenau began as a detention center for political prisoners, but soon became a vast network of camps dedicated to the systematic extermination of Jews and other groups deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. By the end of World War II, over 1 million people, primarily Jews, had lost their lives in the camp, many in gas chambers or through forced labor, starvation, disease, and brutal medical experiments conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death. Auschwitz was the deadliest of all the extermination camps. According to the US Holocaust Memorial Museum, about 1 in every 6 deaths during the Holocaust happened there, the highest number of any of the concentration camps. The only other camp with similar numbers was Treblinka, located in northeast Poland, where an estimated 850,000 people died. The Auschwitz complex consisted of several sections, with Auschwitz II, also known as Auschwitz-Birkenau, being the most infamous. Opened in 1941, Birkenau was designed as the primary extermination camp where mass murder was carried out on a horrific scale. The camp housed multiple gas chambers and crematoria, where victims, primarily Jews, were sent directly to their deaths when they arrived. Roughly 9 out of every 10 of those who arrived at Birkenau were murdered, either in gas chambers or through brutal living conditions, making it the largest single site of genocide in history. Auschwitz was liberated by Soviet forces on January 27, 1945, after the Nazis had evacuated the camp in anticipation of the Soviet advance. Around 60,000 prisoners were forced to march to other locations, and many died during the brutal journey. When the Soviet soldiers entered the camp, they found about 7,000 starving survivors and horrific evidence of the atrocities, including piles of bodies, mountains of clothing, and tons of human hair. Today, Auschwitz stands as a memorial and museum, preserving the memory of those who perished there. It serves as a reminder of the dangers of hatred and intolerance, and the importance of ensuring that the horrors of the Holocaust are never forgotten.
In business news, Tesla and BMW have joined Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers in challenging the European Union's tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, filing cases with the Court of Justice of the European Union. Tesla is the latest big automaker to challenge the EU over its tariffs on China-made electric vehicles. The challenge will open a new front in Brussels' conflict with Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Earlier this month, the EU stepped up its probe into Musk's social media platform X over content moderation. The EU imposed tariffs on China-made EVs at the end of October after an anti-subsidy investigation. The rate for Tesla was set at 7.8%, lower than any of its competitors. The court documents show the US automaker lodged its complaint last week. Chinese EV giants BYD, Geely, and SAIC have also challenged the tariffs at the court. Artificial intelligence stocks have taken a major hit after the Chinese startup DeepSeek unexpectedly gained popularity in the United States. In a brief amount of time, DeepSeek became the most downloaded application in the United States, staking a claim to its future in a quickly evolving AI industry.
US technology shares dropped sharply as surging interest in Chinese startup DeepSeek's low-cost artificial intelligence model raised doubts about the sector's lofty valuations. DeepSeek, which overtook rival ChatGPT to become the top-rated free application on Apple's App Store in the US, says it uses lower-cost chips and less data, challenging a bet in markets that AI will drive demand along a supply chain from chip makers to data centers. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump said that Chinese startup DeepSeek's technology could be a positive development, while it should be a wake-up call for American technology companies. Nvidia, whose chips are the top choice for powering AI applications, dropped about 17%, in line with industry peers Broadcom and Marvell Technology.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that.
Recent market volatility kicks off a busy week in which both the US Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank meet to set interest rates.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to A News for more exclusive updates.